This is completely unacceptable, Ethan. Look at what you have done to the chairman's award. Explain yourself, Brooks. How could you let this happen right before the signing?
The glass shattered before anyone screamed. A crystal award struck the marble floor beside my shoes, exploding into glittering fragments that reflected 100 accusing faces. You knew. Victor Hale's voice cracked through the boardroom. You knew Horizon Biotech would collapse, and you let us sign the acquisition anyway. 23 directors turned toward me. No one asked whether the accusation was true. No one asked why I'd spent 8 years saving this company from disasters they never even noticed. They only watched, waiting, judging. The chairman slowly removed his glasses. His tired eyes settled on me as if I were a stranger. Ethan, his voice was calm. Answer him. I looked at the contracts spread across the polished table. Every signature, every page, every disaster. Exactly as I remembered, because I'd already lived this day once. In my previous life, I had stood from the same chair. I had slammed my evidence onto this same table. I had exposed forged research reports, hidden debts, fake patents, and Victor's secret transfers to shell companies. The board believed me. For 1 hour. Then someone erased the security footage. The evidence disappeared. Witnesses changed their testimony. I became the criminal. 3 months later, I died inside a prison transport after the brakes mysteriously failed on a mountain road. As darkness swallowed me, only one thought remained. I should have stayed silent. Now, I had another chance. The same room, the same betrayal, the same people. Only I was different. Victor pointed at me again. Say something. I slowly folded my hands. I have nothing to say. The silence became heavier than the accusation. Director Lawson frowned. What do you mean, nothing? You've been warning us about risks for weeks. I changed my mind. Someone laughed nervously. Another director whispered, he's giving up. The chairman stared at me. This acquisition involves 40% of the company's assets. I know. If you have concerns. I don't. The room froze. Victor's heartbeat seemed visible beneath his expensive suit. He expected a fight. He expected me to reveal everything. Instead, I sat back. Proceed. His eyes narrowed. For the first time since entering the room, he looked afraid. The contracts were signed. Pens clicked shut. Congratulations echoed around the table. Champagne arrived. Victor accepted handshakes with practiced humility. Without Ethan's support, he announced, smiling toward me, none of this would have been possible. The room applauded. I joined them. One slow clap after another. Victor's smile twitched. He remembered something. In my last life, I never applauded. As everyone celebrated, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I ignored it. It rang again, then again. Finally, I answered. A woman's steady voice spoke. Mr. Brooks? Yes. My name is Iris Quinn. The name tightened my chest. She had been a lead forensic accountant investigating Horizon after my death. In my previous life, she had reached the truth 6 weeks too late. How did you get this number? I asked. You requested an independent audit 3 months ago. I had, before the previous timeline collapsed. She continued. My team found something unusual. I walked toward the empty balcony outside the boardroom. The celebration faded behind the glass doors. What did you find? A brief silence. Someone inside your company has been deleting financial records every Friday at exactly 11:40 p.m. My fingers tightened around the phone. Exactly as before. Only this time, I already knew. I understand, I said quietly. You don't sound surprised. I'm not. Should I continue investigating? I looked through the glass wall. Victor laughed with the directors. The chairman raised another toast. Everyone looked happy. Safe. Victorious. No. She hesitated. No. Archive everything. Mr. Brooks, don't contact the board. You're making a mistake. Maybe, or maybe, for once, I was refusing to become everyone's shield. I ended the call. Behind me, applause erupted again. Ahead of me, rain began falling over the city. The storm had finally arrived. And this time, I wasn't going to stop it. By the time I reached the underground parking garage, the rain had become a curtain of silver. My footsteps echoed between concrete pillars. Someone clapped slowly behind me. Cold. I didn't turn around. Very cold. Victor emerged from the shadows, holding an umbrella he hadn't bothered to open. You surprised me today. I know. I thought you'd make another heroic speech. I've retired from heroics. He laughed. I almost believed that. He stepped closer until only a few feet separated us. What changed? I met his eyes. The answer lingered behind my tongue. Because I remember dying. Instead, I said people change. No. His smile faded. They break. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Rainwater dripped from the ceiling onto the polished hood of my car. Victor circled me slowly. You've spent years cleaning everyone's mess. Yes. You covered legal problems. Yes. You negotiated impossible contracts. Yes. And today, he leaned closer. You watched us sign a deal you know is dangerous. I did. His expression hardened. So there really is something wrong. I smiled faintly. I never said that. You didn't deny it either. He searched my face as though looking for cracks. There were none. Not anymore. I'll ask you one last time, he said. What are you hiding? I unlocked my car. The same thing you're hiding. His hand froze on the door frame. Only for a heartbeat. But I saw it. Fear. Tiny. Real. Then he laughed again. You become interesting. I become tired. I got into the car and closed the door. Victor remained standing in the rain, watching me drive away. In another life, I would have chased after him with documents, warnings, and proof. Tonight, I left him alone with his own secrets. My apartment overlooked the river. It was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that allowed old memories to crawl back. I poured a glass of water instead of whiskey. In my previous life, this had been the night I started collecting evidence openly. By sunrise, 3 trusted colleagues had secretly betrayed me. One had copied my files. One had informed Victor. One had testified against me. I still remembered each signature, each lie, each disappointed expression pretending to be regret. The doorbell rang. 3 sharp presses. Exactly on time. I didn't need the security camera. I already knew who stood outside. Daniel Pierce, my closest friend, the first man to betray me. I opened the door. Ethan. Daniel smiled with effortless warmth, carrying takeout boxes. I figured you'd skip dinner after today's meeting. You figured correctly. So, he stepped inside without waiting for permission. What really happened? He placed the food on the table, but never took off his coat. He wasn't here to eat. He was here to gather information. Just like before. I changed my mind, I said. About the acquisition. About everything. Daniel studied me. You've never walked away from a fight. I didn't. What do you mean? I simply stopped fighting battles that aren't mine. He laughed awkwardly. That's not like you. No, it isn't. He tried several more questions. I answered each one with calm, harmless truths that revealed nothing. Minutes passed. His confidence slowly disappeared. Finally, he stood. If you need anything, I won't. The words escaped before I softened them. Daniel blinked. Ethan, you should go. He hesitated near the door. I hope you still trust me. I looked directly into his eyes. In another lifetime, I had trusted him until the moment prison gates closed behind me. I hope you're the man I once believed you were. His smile faltered. He left without another word. The apartment became silent again. I locked the door, then opened the small fireproof safe hidden beneath the bookshelf. Inside lay a single envelope, untouched. In my previous life, I had opened it immediately. Tonight, I only stared at the handwriting. If anything happens to me, give this to Ethan Brooks. No sender's name, no return address. Only a truth that had once arrived far too late. This time, I wasn't sure whether opening it would save me or destroy someone else. The envelope remained unopened until sunrise. I sat by the window, watching pale light spill across the river while the city slowly woke beneath a blanket of gray clouds. My fingers rested on the seal. In my previous life, curiosity had ruled me. Now, patience did. A knock interrupted the silence. Not hurried, not aggressive. 3 measured knocks. I slipped the envelope back into the safe before opening the door. Iris Quinn stood outside in a charcoal coat, rain clinging to the sleeves. You told me not to investigate, she said. I did. I ignored you. Her honesty almost made me smile. Come in. She entered without looking around, her attention fixed on me instead. You look different from the man I spoke to yesterday. I've had a long night. No. She shook her head. You look like someone who already knows the ending. The sentence lingered in the room. For one dangerous moment, I wondered whether she could somehow see through me. Then she placed a thick folder on the coffee table. I brought copies. I told you to archive them. I don't take orders from clients when financial crimes are involved. I looked at the folder, but made no move to open it. Iris frowned. Aren't you even going to read them? I already know what's inside. She folded her arms. Then tell me. Ghost companies. Her expression remained unreadable. Continue. Payments routed through medical suppliers. A flicker crossed her face. Offshore accounts. Silence. And the deleted files, I added quietly. They're only a distraction. Now she stared openly. I never mentioned the offshore accounts. You didn't have to. The room became unnaturally still. Who are you? She asked. A man who made too many mistakes. She stepped closer. Mr. Brooks, this isn't ordinary fraud. I know. Someone is preparing Horizon to collapse. I know. And you're just... She searched for the right word. Watching. I walked toward the window. Across the river stood Horizon's headquarters, sunlight reflecting from its glass facade. I spent years preventing every crisis. I kept my eyes on the building. When people were careless, I corrected them. When executives lied, I cleaned the damage. When investors panicked, I calmed them. And when everyone celebrated success, I let out a slow breath. They thanked someone else. Iris remained silent. This time, I continued. The people who created the fire can feel the heat themselves. So you're letting innocent employees suffer? The question landed harder than I expected. I closed my eyes. No. I turned toward her. I'm protecting the people who deserve protection. Then why refuse to expose Victor? Because Victor isn't the real problem. She blinked. What? The man everyone sees isn't the one pulling the strings. Her expression changed from frustration to concentration. You have evidence? I have certainty. That's not enough. No, it isn't. By noon, Horizon stock had climbed another 12%. Financial channels called the acquisition historic. Analysts praised Victor's leadership. Employees flooded social media with celebration photos. The higher they climbed, the farther they would fall. My phone buzzed continuously. Board members, journalists, investors. I ignored every call. At 1 o'clock, the chairman himself appeared at my apartment. Chairman Samuel Grant had once been the closest thing I had to a father. Today he looked exhausted. Ethan, he glanced at the untouched tea on my table. You didn't answer. I wasn't available. He sighed. You've never spoken to me like this. People change. He looked around the apartment before lowering himself onto the sofa. I've known you for 8 years. I know. I watched you work until dawn. Yes. You miss birthdays. Yes. You buried your own mother's funeral because we had an emergency shareholder meeting. His voice became quieter, and you never complained. The memory tightened my chest. I had stood beside my mother's grave after everyone else had gone home, still wearing my business suit, still answering work calls. No one had even noticed I was gone. Samuel rubbed his forehead. Tell me honestly. He looked directly at me. Did we fail you? I answered without anger. Yes. The old man lowered his eyes. Neither of us spoke for nearly a minute. Finally, he whispered, I'm sorry. In my previous life, those words had never come. I believed he meant them, but regret could not stop what was already coming. You should resign, I said quietly. His head lifted. What? Leave before the quarterly audit. He stared. Why? I can't answer. Ethan, if you trust me at all. I held his gaze. Walk away. He searched my face for nearly half a minute, then slowly stood. I don't understand you anymore. I know. At the door he paused. If you're wrong, I'll accept the consequences. And if you're right, I looked toward Horizon Tower. Then consequences will find everyone else. He left without another word. That evening, Horizon held a celebration banquet at the Grand Meridian Hotel. I wasn't invited, just like before. Only this time, I had no intention of attending. At least, not officially. The hotel lobby buzzed with laughter and expensive perfume. Crystal chandeliers reflected across polished marble floors, while cameras flashed around executives posing for photographs. I stood across the street beneath a black umbrella, watching, not participating. A black sedan stopped beside me. The rear window lowered halfway. "Get in." I recognized the voice immediately. "Samuel Grant." I opened the door. "I thought you were attending." I was. "Were." He handed me a folded resignation letter. I left. I looked at him. "You resigned. I trusted you." The simplicity of the answer unsettled me. "You don't even know why." "No, but I know you." For the first time since returning to this life, someone had chosen trust without demanding proof. I carefully folded the letter again. "Thank you." Samuel smiled sadly. "I hope I haven't just ruined my career." I almost answered. Instead, I remained silent. The less he knew, the safer he would be. Inside the hotel ballroom, applause echoed through the speakers. A giant screen displayed Horizon's newest promotional film. Victor stood on stage, confident, perfectly composed. "Our future," he declared, "has never been brighter." The audience applauded. Samuel watched through the tinted window. "He believes every word." "No." I shook my head. "He believes people believe him." There was a difference, one he had never noticed. Halfway through Victor's speech, my phone vibrated. A message from Daniel. "We need to meet immediately. Someone has been asking about you." Exactly on schedule. In my previous life, this was where I had made my fatal mistake. I had rushed to meet him. By morning, fabricated evidence had appeared in my apartment. Not this time. I typed a single reply. "I'm busy." 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Finally. "Don't make this difficult." I locked the screen without answering. Across the street, another black vehicle arrived. Unlike the luxury sedans entering the hotel, this one had no company logo, no plates. 2 men stepped out. Neither entered the banquet. Instead, they scanned the sidewalks, looking for someone, looking for me. Samuel noticed them. "Do you know them?" No. That was true. I had never seen their faces, only their work. In my previous life, anonymous men had visited my apartment the night before my arrest. My security cameras had mysteriously failed. My neighbors had remembered nothing. One of the strangers looked directly toward our car. Our eyes met. He touched the earpiece beneath his collar. The second man immediately turned. "They found us," Samuel whispered. "No." I kept my voice calm. They confirmed I changed my routine. The sedan's engine started. Samuel looked at me. "Ethan, drive." The car pulled away from the curb just as both men began crossing the street. Neither ran. Neither shouted. They simply watched our taillights disappear into the traffic. Several blocks later, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered without speaking. A man's voice filled the silence. "You were supposed to be somewhere else tonight." The call ended. I stared at the dark screen. Someone else knew the script of my previous life. Or someone had just realized I was no longer following it. The game had changed. And for the first time, I wasn't the only player who understood that. The call lasted only 5 seconds. It was enough. I replayed the man's words in my head as Samuel drove through the rain-slick streets. "You were supposed to be somewhere else tonight. Not we expected you. Not we were looking for you." Someone knew exactly where I should have been. The realization settled into my chest like cold iron. Samuel tightened his grip on the steering wheel. "Who was it?" "I don't know." "Do you believe that?" I believe someone expected me to repeat an old mistake. He glanced at me, confused. "What mistake?" "I won't be making it." The next morning, Horizon's headquarters buzzed with celebration. The acquisition had become front-page news. Financial reporters crowded the lobby. Employees carried pastries between departments. No one noticed the tension hidden beneath the smiles. I entered through the side entrance with a visitor's pass. No executive badge. No reserved elevator. Just another face in the building I had helped create. Conversations stopped as I passed. He came back. I thought he'd resigned. No, he's still a consultant. They say Victor froze him out. I ignored every whisper. For years, I had wasted energy correcting rumors. Rumors had never destroyed me. People had. As I reached the executive floor, Daniel hurried toward me. Ethan. He looked relieved. I've been calling you all night. I know. You never answered. I didn't want to. His smile faltered. You've changed. So I've been told. He lowered his voice. Someone searched your office. I paused. When? Late last night. Who? They used executive authorization. Exactly as before. Only this time, there would be nothing to find. I cleared my files weeks ago, I said. Daniel blinked. Weeks ago? Yes. You expected this. I prepared for possibilities. His eyes searched mine. What are you hiding? I met his gaze calmly. The same thing I hid yesterday. Nothing. I smiled faintly. If that's what you want to believe. For a brief moment, frustration flashed across his face. Then it disappeared beneath practiced concern. You should be careful. I am. No. His voice grew quieter. I mean from Victor. I know exactly who I should be careful of. He swallowed. Neither of us mentioned names. I unlocked my old office. Dust had already begun settling across the shelves. Family photographs were gone. Awards had disappeared. The walls looked strangely unfamiliar. I opened the lowest drawer of my desk. Empty. Someone had searched it thoroughly. A tiny scratch near the lock confirmed it. They had expected documents, evidence, insurance. Instead, they found nothing. A soft knock came from the doorway. Iris Quinn, you weren't answering your phone. I've been busy. She closed the door behind her. I checked the acquisition files again. And the patents Horizon purchased. She placed several printed pages onto the desk. Belonged to a company that legally stopped existing 4 years ago. I looked at the documents. Exactly. Which means, she asked. It means someone forged ownership, and the board approved it. They approved what they were told. Iris exhaled sharply. This is larger than Victor. Yes. Then why are you protecting him? I'm not. That's what it looks like. I picked up one page. The person behind this wanted one thing. What? They wanted Victor visible. She frowned. A public face. A sacrifice. Realization slowly spread across her expression. So when everything collapses, they'll blame him, and the real mastermind walks away. I nodded. For the first time since we'd met, Iris stopped trying to convince me to act immediately. Instead, she asked a different question. Do you know who that mastermind is? Silence stretched between us. I have a suspicion. That's not enough. No, it isn't. An emergency company-wide email arrived. Mandatory executive meeting. Attendance required. I almost laughed. In my previous life, that meeting had become the beginning of my downfall. This time, I attended anyway. Not to fight, to watch. The executive conference room felt colder than usual. 20 directors, department heads, legal advisors. Victor stood confidently beside the presentation screen. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, we've encountered a minor compliance question regarding yesterday's acquisition. Minor. The word echoed through the room. I folded my hands and remained silent. Victor clicked the remote. Several documents appeared on the screen. Forged audit reports. Fabricated financial summaries. Every page looked authentic. Every page had been prepared long before yesterday. Someone had planned this. Victor continued speaking. Our legal department assures us these discrepancies are administrative. A director raised a hand. So there's no risk? None. Lies came naturally to him. Or perhaps he believed them. Halfway through the presentation, the conference room doors opened. 3 government investigators entered. No one spoke. The lead investigator displayed his identification. We've received allegations of financial fraud involving Horizon Biotech. The room exploded. What? This is impossible. Who reported us? Victor remained standing. Calm. Almost too calm. We'll cooperate fully. The investigators nodded. We'll begin by securing all executive offices. My former office. Victor's office. The chairman's office. Every computer. Every server. Everything. I watched the panic spread through the room. No one noticed me. For years, I had always been the first person they looked toward during crises. Now, I had become invisible. It was strangely peaceful. One investigator approached me separately. Mr. Ethan Brooks? Yes. We have several questions. I'll answer what I can. Victor interrupted immediately. Ethan wasn't involved in yesterday's signing. Interesting. Protecting me? Or controlling the narrative? The investigator looked between us. We'll decide who was involved. Victor's smile tightened. Hours later, employees gathered in the cafeteria, exchanging frightened whispers. Stock prices had already begun falling. Media helicopters circled above the headquarters. News alerts flooded every phone. Regulators launch investigation into Horizon acquisition. I sat alone with a cup of untouched coffee. Across the room, Daniel argued quietly with someone from legal. He looked terrified. Not guilty. Terrified. There was a difference. A shadow fell across my table. Samuel Grant. He no longer wore his chairman's badge. You were right. I wish I hadn't been. He sat down heavily. I've spoken to investigators, and they think someone manipulated the board for years. They're correct. Samuel lowered his voice. Ethan. He hesitated. I found something in the archives before I resigned. My heartbeat slowed. What? He slid a worn personnel file across the table. I almost threw this away. I opened it. Inside was an employment application dated 11 years earlier. Applicant: Victor Hale. Everything looked ordinary until I reached the final page. The recommendation letter. It wasn't signed by any executive. It carried only one handwritten initial. A. My fingers stopped. I knew that handwriting. Not from this life. From the prison letters I had received before my death. Every anonymous instruction. Every threat. Every promise that I would never discover the truth. The same elegant stroke. The same unmistakable ink. The mastermind had left his signature years before anyone realized he existed. And for the first time, I finally had a name's first letter. It wasn't proof, but it was the first real crack in the wall. The letter with the single initial remained in my hands long after Samuel left. One stroke of ink. One ghost from a life that had already ended. I closed the personnel file and slipped it into my briefcase. In my previous life, I would have rushed to the investigators. I would have announced my discovery before confirming anything. That impatience had cost me everything. Not again. The investigation spread through Horizon like a slow-moving fire. Entire departments stopped working. Computers were seized. Conference rooms became interview rooms. People who had laughed together only days earlier now avoided eye contact. Every conversation carried suspicion. I walked through the lobby unnoticed until someone called my name. Mr. Brooks. It was the lead investigator. His identification badge read, Adrian Cole. I was hoping we'd speak privately. I nodded. They escorted me into a temporary interview room. No cameras, just a recorder resting on the table. Cole switched it off. We're not recording this conversation. Why? Because I want your opinion before I ask for evidence. I studied him carefully. In my experience, opinions are dangerous. So is silence. That almost made me smile. He slid several photographs across the table. Financial records, warehouse inventories, shipping manifests. Every document pointed toward Horizon. None reached the person behind it. Something is wrong, Cole admitted. You're investigating the wrong level. His eyes narrowed. What does that mean? The acquisition wasn't the objective. Then what was? Access. Access to what? I looked at the documents. Research. He leaned forward. Go on. The patents were worthless. The laboratories weren't. Realization slowly appeared on his face. They never wanted the company. They wanted everything stored inside it. Cole remained silent for nearly a minute. Then he asked quietly, Who? I don't know yet. It wasn't entirely true. I suspected, but suspicion had buried me once before. This time, names would wait until facts caught up. Outside the building, reporters crowded every entrance. Camera flashes exploded as executives attempted to leave. Victor emerged surrounded by lawyers. Microphones rushed toward him. Mr. Hale, did you approve the acquisition personally? Are the fraud allegations true? He smiled with practiced confidence. Horizon has always complied with every regulation. Another question. Did Ethan Brooks warn you? Victor hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. Then he answered. Mr. Brooks supported the acquisition. Technically true. A perfect lie hidden inside a fact. I watched the broadcast from a television in the lobby. Iris stood beside me. He just implicated you. I expected him to. You don't seem angry. I spent my first life being angry. And now, I'd rather be correct. She looked at me for a long moment before quietly saying, I requested independent access to the deleted servers. You'll never get approval. I already did. She handed me a flash drive. They missed one backup. I accepted it carefully. What did you find? I haven't opened it. Why? Because if what's inside is what I think. She met my eyes. I'd rather someone who understands the consequences see it first. That night, I returned home. The apartment was silent. I inserted the flash drive into an isolated laptop. Hundreds of encrypted folders appeared. Most contained accounting records. Some contained legal correspondence. Then I found a hidden directory. No name, only a date. The day before my death. I opened the first file. It wasn't financial data. It was security footage. Prison transport. Mountain road. Brake inspection. 3 mechanics. 1 supervisor. The supervisor turned toward the camera. My breath caught. Not Victor. Not Daniel. A man with silver hair. Calm eyes. And the same signet ring I had seen years ago on the anonymous hand that delivered prison letters. The ring bore a single engraved letter. I watched the footage 3 more times. Each viewing confirmed the same impossible truth. The man never touched the prison vehicle. He simply observed. Others followed his instructions without hesitation. He didn't need to commit the crime himself. Authority was enough. I froze the final frame. His face wasn't completely visible, but the ring was unmistakable. Someone knocked sharply at my apartment door. 3 rapid knocks. Not Daniel. Not Samuel. I quietly removed the flash drive and opened the door. Adrian Cole stood outside. I apologized for the hour. You found something. I did. He entered, immediately noticing the laptop. I received an anonymous package. He placed a sealed evidence bag on the table. Inside lay another signet ring. Identical. The engraved letter gleamed beneath the plastic. Hey, he noticed my expression. You've seen this before. Yes. Where? I silently turned the laptop toward him. The paused security footage filled the screen. Cole's eyes widened. He stepped closer. Where did you get this? A server backup. He watched the clip from beginning to end without speaking. When it ended, he pressed replay himself. Finally, he whispered, "This changes everything." No. I shook my head. It changes where we look. By morning, investigators identified the silver-haired man. His name spread quietly through government offices before reaching the media. Arthur Ashcombe, a billionaire investor, philanthropist, chairman of Ashcombe Capital. For over a decade, his investment fund had quietly financed companies connected to Horizon, always indirectly, always through intermediaries, never once appearing on official ownership documents. Victor had been the visible executive. Arthur had remained invisible. Until now, the press conference began at noon. Every major news network carried it live. Arthur stood behind a polished podium wearing a perfectly tailored suit. "I have no connection," he declared calmly, "to any criminal activity involving Horizon Biotech." His lawyers nodded. Reporters shouted questions. Then Adrian Cole entered the room. Without raising his voice, he addressed the cameras. This morning, investigators recovered previously deleted digital evidence. A screen behind the podium lit up. The prison transport footage appeared. Then deleted financial transfers. Then warehouse access logs. Then internal emails routed through shell corporations. Each document connected another thread. None mentioned Ethan Brooks. Every trail led upward, toward Arthur. Victor watched from the front row. The color drained from his face. He slowly turned toward Arthur. "You?" Arthur didn't look at him. Not once. Victor finally understood. He had never been a partner. He had always been disposable. Outside the conference hall, Horizon stock entered freefall. Investors fled. Banks suspended credit. Board members resigned one after another. No speech. No accusation. No act of revenge for me had caused it. The truth had simply arrived. And once it did, everyone's own choices finished the work. Arthur's composure cracked for the first time as officers approached the stage. The cameras captured every second. The invisible man had finally been forced into the light. The collapse I had once tried to prevent. had become inevitable. The city felt quieter after Arthur Ashcombe's arrest, not because people had stopped talking, because they had finally begun listening. For years, every news cycle had chased louder scandals, bigger numbers, and polished speeches. Now the headlines carried a different tone. Ashcombe Capital under criminal investigation. Horizon Board approves full internal review. Former consultants' warnings confirmed. I folded the newspaper and set it aside without satisfaction. Justice was not joy. It was simply the end of pretending. The investigators officially cleared my name 3 days later. Adrian Cole met me outside the courthouse. He handed me a slim folder. Everything connected to your previous prosecution has been vacated. I accepted it without opening it. My record, clean. My assets, they're being returned. My reputation, he smiled faintly. That part isn't ours to restore. I looked toward the courthouse steps where reporters waited behind barricades. They'll ask for interviews. They already have. I'm not interested. Cole nodded as if he'd expected the answer. You know, he slipped his hands into his coat pockets. Most people would want the world to hear their side. I spent too many years trying to convince people. And now, if the truth needs me to shout, I looked at the folder in my hands. It isn't strong enough. Cole extended his hand. I don't think we'll meet again. I hope not. We shook hands. For the first time in either life, I walked away from a government building without looking over my shoulder. My apartment no longer felt like a hiding place. The curtains stayed open. The safe beneath the bookshelf remained unlocked. Only one thing inside still demanded my attention. The unopened envelope. The one addressed to me. The one I had postponed through every storm. I sat at the dining table and carefully broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter. The paper had yellowed slightly with age. The handwriting belonged to Professor Leonard Hayes, my mentor, the man who had died of a sudden heart attack 6 months before my first downfall. I began reading. Ethan, if you're reading this, I was right to fear that I wouldn't have enough time. You trust people too easily, especially when they praise your loyalty. I swallowed slowly. The words felt painfully personal. The letter continued. Arthur Ashcombe approached me 3 years ago. He wanted access to our medical research. When I refused, he smiled. A man who smiles after hearing no is far more dangerous than a man who becomes angry. My grip tightened on the page. Professor Hayes had known. Not everything, but enough. The final paragraph made my chest ache. One day, you'll discover that protecting everyone is impossible. Protect your principles instead. People worth saving will eventually find their way back to you. I closed my eyes. In my previous life, I had never received this letter. Arthur's people had intercepted it after the professor's death. This time, it had reached me, perhaps not in time to prevent suffering, but in time to understand it. That evening, I visited my mother's grave. Fresh lilies rested beside the stone. Someone had already been there. I crouched quietly. I finally stopped trying to save everyone. The breeze moved gently through the trees. I think a small laugh escaped me. You would have told me to do that years ago. I stayed until sunset, not searching for answers, simply allowing silence to exist without guilt. A week later, Horizon Biotech held its first public shareholders meeting since the scandal. The atmosphere was nothing like the triumphant banquet from earlier. There were no banners, no champagne, no rehearsed applause, only accountability. Samuel Grant had returned, not as chairman, but as an independent advisor appointed to oversee the company's restructuring. When I entered the hall, conversations softened. People watched, some with embarrassment, others with gratitude. Samuel approached first. I wasn't sure you'd come. I wasn't either. He smiled. Would you sit on the new oversight committee? I looked around the room. The same walls, the same company, yet everything felt different. No, he didn't seem offended. I thought you might say that. I gave this place everything once. I know. I won't make that mistake again. Samuel nodded slowly. What will you do instead? Before I could answer, Iris Quinn walked toward us carrying a folder. I was hoping he'd refuse. Samuel raised an eyebrow. You were. She smiled at me. My firm is creating an independent nonprofit that audits medical research funding. She handed me the proposal. No investors. No corporate board. No hidden shareholders. Just transparency. I skimmed the first page. My name appeared under one line. Advisory Director, pending acceptance. I looked up. You planned this. She shrugged. I planned an opportunity. You don't even know if I'll accept. I know what matters to you. There was no pressure in her voice. Only respect. Something I'd spent years giving away without receiving. I smiled for the first time in what felt like 2 lifetimes. I'll accept. Samuel laughed softly. I had a feeling that answer would be easier. As the meeting continued, shareholders voted to remove every executive directly involved in the fraud. No dramatic speeches. No shouting. Just raise hands. One decision after another. Consequences written into official records. Daniel Pierce sat alone near the back of the hall. When the meeting ended, he approached me. I owe you an apology. You do. I was weak. You were. I convinced myself loyalty meant following whoever held power. I studied him quietly. He wasn't asking for forgiveness, only telling the truth. I won't ask you to trust me again. Good. He lowered his head. I hope you find peace. I already have. He smiled sadly. I can see that. He walked away. This time, I didn't watch him leave with anger. Some relationships don't end with reconciliation. They end with understanding. And sometimes, that is enough. The future no longer looked like a second chance to rewrite every mistake. It looked like something far simpler. A life built on choices that no longer required sacrifice to prove my worth. The weight I had carried for 2 lifetimes was finally beginning to lift. The first morning at the foundation began without cameras. No reporters waited outside. No shareholders demanded statements. No executives asked me to rescue impossible situations. The office occupied 2 renovated floors of an old brick building overlooking the river. It was modest by corporate standards, but every room had glass walls. Nothing could be hidden behind polished wood or locked executive doors. I arrived early, not because someone expected it, because I wanted to. Iris was already there, sleeves rolled to her elbows, balancing 2 cups of coffee while reading a stack of grant applications. You still work too much, I said. She looked up. I've been told that's contagious. I accepted one of the cups. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence felt different now. Not heavy, comfortable. She finally asked, "Do you miss Horizon?" I considered the question carefully. I miss the people I thought it could become. And the company? No. She nodded, as though she'd expected that answer. Good. Why? Because if you missed it, you'd always be tempted to return. She was right. The temptation wasn't the building. It was the old version of myself. The man who believed his value depended on how much he could endure. That man had died once already. I had no intention of burying him again. Over the following weeks, the foundation uncovered irregularities in several publicly funded research projects. Nothing as massive as Horizon, but enough to stop millions in fraudulent grants before they disappeared. For the first time, prevention didn't require sacrifice. It required transparency. Every audit was published. Every recommendation was public. People complained. People resisted. But no one could claim they hadn't seen the evidence. One afternoon, Adrian Cole stopped by the office carrying a thin folder. You made my job easier. I wasn't trying to. I know. He placed the folder on my desk. The prosecution reached a plea agreement with Victor Hale. I looked at the cover, but didn't open it. Does he still blame me? Cole smiled faintly. No. He testified against Arthur. I raised an eyebrow. Voluntarily, after Arthur's lawyers tried to pin everything on him. There was a strange symmetry in that. A man who had survived by sacrificing others had finally experienced being sacrificed himself. What sentence? Reduced. I nodded once. No satisfaction. No disappointment. Just acceptance. Cole noticed. I expected more of a reaction. I spent too many years waiting for other people's punishment to heal me. And it doesn't. He extended his hand. You've changed, Ethan. I finally believed what someone tried to teach me. Ooh, I thought of Professor Hayes, of my mother, of the version of myself that had died on a mountain road. Several people. Cole smiled. I'll leave you to your work. As he walked away, I realized something unexpected. For the first time since my rebirth, I hadn't thought about revenge all day. That evening, I received a handwritten invitation. It wasn't from a corporation or a government office. It came from a public university. They wanted me to speak to graduating business students. The old me would have declined. The older me accepted. The auditorium was full long before the ceremony began. Hundreds of graduates sat in dark academic robes, their families filling every seat behind them. As I stood backstage, the dean handed me a neatly folded speech. "I prepared some remarks," she said. I glanced at the pages. Corporate success, leadership, innovation. I smiled politely. "I appreciate it, but I'd rather speak honestly." She hesitated only a second before nodding. The announcer called my name. Applause echoed through the hall. I stepped to the podium. For a long moment, I simply looked at the audience. So many faces, so many futures. Then I folded the prepared speech and set it aside. When I was younger, I believed that if I worked harder than everyone else, the truth would always win. The auditorium grew quiet. I was wrong. No one moved. Truth doesn't win because it exists. It wins because someone refuses to abandon it. I paused. There will be people who mistake your kindness for weakness. People who reward your loyalty with betrayal. People who expect you to solve every problem they create. Several students nodded almost unconsciously. When that happens, I smiled gently. Remember something I learned too late. You are responsible for your principles, not for saving people who refuse to save themselves. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thoughtful. When the applause finally came, it wasn't loud at first. It grew gradually, until the entire hall stood. After the ceremony ended, I walked alone along the river. The evening sun reflected across the water in long ribbons of gold. My phone vibrated once. A news notification. Arthur Ashcombe's final appeal denied. I read it, then deleted it. The chapter had ended long ago. It didn't deserve another page. I reached the same overlook where, months earlier, I had watched Horizon celebrate a victory that would become its downfall. The skyline hadn't changed. I thought about the frightened man who had once believed silence meant surrender. He had been wrong. Sometimes silence is not fear. Sometimes it is patience. Sometimes it is the quiet confidence of someone who no longer needs to prove the truth. The wind carried the sounds of the city behind me. Ahead lay only open water. I smiled, not because my life had become perfect, but because it finally belonged to me. In my first life, I had died trying to carry everyone else's burdens. In my second, I learned the courage to set them down. And in that simple choice, I found a freedom that revenge could never give.